Well, since May 2022, some 100 refugees have been camped outside the UN High Commissioner for Refugees headquarters in Pretoria. Their eviction and relocation were mandated by the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria. Yesterday morning, the eviction took place and it was met with some resistance. The occupants were given an ultimatum to either go to the Lindela Repatriation Centre or to Kgosi Mampuru Prison. Well, joining me now to further discuss this is Amir Sheik, who's the chairperson of the Africa Diaspora Forum. He joins us via telephone link. Amir, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us this morning. I'd like to get your reaction to the evictions that we saw taking place yesterday.
Thank you very much, Ntokozo, and to your listeners also. Really, what have happened yesterday is something that we have been expecting for a long time. And it's not something that only started yesterday. This is a process that has been started almost 2019, where we had some asylum seekers and refugees who actually said, they allegedly said they were victims of xenophobic attacks and they cannot reintegrate back into the community, and hence wanted the UNHCR offices actually to assist them with resettlement into a third country where they are safe. So that process, at least, was what we stopped when some of them actually, trespassed to UNHCR offices, and then the police were called, and many of them actually arrested, and some actually, plead for their safety. Then there was a group of 50 that remained there, and others that actually increased. As a diaspora community, we have sent emissaries to them, considering the fact that most of them were actually of Congolese origin, especially from the Eastern Congo area that actually there is a war. People who speak the Lingala and actually French, but unfortunately our many efforts to actually make sure that at least they either reintegrate safely or we find an alternative accommodation for them did not bear fruit, because they only, what they thought the only remedy for them was that the UNHCR need to resettle them. But one thing that majority of the people need to understand is that UNHCR in these countries migrants are not in concentration camps, and the only thing UN can assist the government is what they consider three durable conditions, which is reintegration into local community, and where if they cannot reintegrate, to voluntarily return them back home, of which is a dignified way. And the last option, which only 1% of maybe refugees may qualify globally, is resettlement. But sincerely, what happened yesterday could have been averted if at least our own members, the asylum seekers and refugees, could have had the concern from many of us that at least they were supposed to integrate, or we assist them, find alternative accommodations, or even fundraise on their behalf so that they can go back in dignity back to their homes where they came from.
Right. Amir, it does appear that reintegration is the only sort of viable, sustainable solution that is available to these refugees. There is, however, much resistance, and understandably so. I mean, a lot of these refugees that we found outside the UNHCR offices have been victims of xenophobic attacks and certainly xenophobic sentiments in some of these communities. What work can organizations such as yourself, can the state, the UNHCR do to assist them with this reintegration process? Is it about having a dialogue with the community residents? Is it about setting up separate structures in these communities for them so that they're not wholly dependent and reliant on these communities? What does a reintegration process actually look like?
Okay, first of all, they have got all three durable actually conditions or solutions are actually there. First of all, any refugee or asylum seeker have actually right to self-integrate themselves. In other countries, the UNHCR actually, or whoever is bringing them to the country, does a process of orientation where they are taught the cultures and the norm of that country, where they will resettle them. The situation in South Africa is different. So here, first of all, integration depends on an individual person because there are no concentration camps. But in the present where a migrant is affected and they say they cannot actually, go back to that community, the other option that will be viable will be actually to reintegrate them in an area where they will be safe, away from there where they were uprooted, And in the absence of that, then the UN will have actually right to make sure that where they actually came is safe and there is a dignified return is possible, and then to facilitate with the International Organization for Migration so that they can be taken back actually to there where they came from.
Yeah.
The settlement is another durable solution, but is an option open for very few people globally, maybe 1% of the world refugees. But still, with actually long-standing relationship that we had with actually Lindela management and the inspectorate, we will still visit those who are there. It's not just a walk on the park, Lindela. It's a concentration camp. You need a process where at least you need to notify the management and to a certain extent the chief director of inspectorate for you to get access. We will still follow them. We will follow parents whose children were actually taken away from. And those still who are outside yet, we will still find a way we can reason with them so that they either reintegrate back to the community, or at least we find alternatives way of sending them back home, at least in a dignified manner.
All right. Talking about sending them home in a dignified manner, I mean, some of these refugees are fleeing, war-stricken countries. They're fleeing actual conflict. Certainly, along the eastern front of the DRC, we know that there is some serious instability in that area. Surely we can't be expecting people to go back home when we know that there's a lot of insecurity in those areas.
We have actually done this before without even the assistance of the UN or International Organization for Migrants, where a time will come and a migrant will say, enough is enough, rather than I actually dying in South Africa with no assistance, with no future for my children. I rather even risk and go back. We do not have a handbook that governs us like the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, and we have done this together with our partners organization like Africa Awake, and where we have seen at least a family coming to us and saying that enough is enough. Even though I cannot go back to the Eastern Kivu, at least, I'm a Congolese, I can go to Lubumbashi, or I can go to, the same region of Katanga region, or I can go to Kinshasa, and at least in that way, at least make, restart life. We're not saying we're taking them back to where actually they can, but that is an individual decision, and it's only if and only if they want to actually go that side. But we will have actually urged, and we have tried many times, to reason with them rather than actually risking their lives staying on the outside and on the cold, with their children actually having no education and all that. At least, if they cannot reintegrate back to the way they were uprooted or where they think their life is in danger, to try elsewhere actually in Gauteng, so that we can assist them. But that is an individual decision. It lies with them. They are still right to go back to UNHCR and ask for resettlement. But at least as a migrant representing advocacy group, together with our other partners, we will try to make sure that whatever is best for the children and the parents, and we will assist them on that.
All right. Well, we know that there was a group, as you've mentioned, that of course has slept outside and were pretty much exposed to the environment overnight because they were the group that opted not to go to the Lindela Repatriation Centre and also obviously didn't want to go to the Kgosi Mampuru Prison. What happens to that cohort of refugees that we know spent the night outside in Makulnuk?
There are organizations that were more than willing. The UNHCR have got a partner called the Lawyers for Human Rights that does the socio-economic aspect. There were organizations that have done sterling job, like the Coalition Against Anti-Xenophobia, making sure that even they place those ones actually have the list of 10 families consisting of actually between 10 family members to actually 2 family members. And what they have done, and actually our partners on the ground, is that to make sure they find an alternative place for them. Some of them even were willing to take them actually to their own houses. Others were actually taken to charge. Still, we are actually finding accommodation and resources so that those who are not willing to either go to Lindela or Kgosi Mampuru and who are refused, which is a priority 10 families, will at least have an accommodation of their own, and that is something we are working with as an organization and with our partners organization. Our houses are open for them. There are some willing churches that have accepted them, but we will make sure, as much as they do not want to go to that Lindela concentration camp, we will absorb them in our houses, churches, and mosques and synagogues.
Right. Amir, I want to talk about this eviction order itself. You know, when we look at those images, as you would have seen on our screen, of those families being forced to spend the evening outside, one can't help but imagine if there haven't been any rights abused in this eviction process that we saw yesterday. Giving refugees the option of either going to Lindela Repatriation Centre, a notorious detention centre, or going to Kgosi Mampuru Prison doesn't sound like an alternative accommodation as stipulated in our constitution. When evicting a person, there has to be alternative accommodation made available. Those two options do not seem to meet that muster. Was there another way that this could have potentially been handled, do you think?
Yes, there were other ways if the Department of Home Affairs and the UNHCR were willing to even engage some of the organizations that were more than willing to accept them. The court to actually ruling was very clear. The city of Tshwane and the Department of Home Affairs were supposed to give them alternative accommodation and not to send them into concentration camps and such. Had there been an engagement between the department, because we have sometimes, as part of the external stakeholder of the Department of Home Affairs, if they were made even aware, at least Lindela could not be an option, Kgosi Mampuru could not be an option, because that is a jail on its own, notorious. And then Lindela is a concentration camp where at least even access to it, you need at least a drier arrangement. And it is a lie, a blatant lie to say that they will be actually allowed their children in, they will be allowed to move in and out. That is something that cannot happen in a place that I know for the past 14 years, that I've been working with, even them inside, for those who are in detention, for repatriation or other cases. So the fact is, had the department consulted organizations, there is a lot of willingness from actually organizations that are from migrant organizations, and we could have taken them and make sure that at least even whatever was done yesterday was actually carried in a manner that is within that standard of the international regulation. As a country that have ratified the international regulations on refugee,
right,
and have even gone further domesticating this into the Refugee Act of 1998.
Right, well, those are certainly some disturbing scenes that we saw overnight, and I'd imagine that's a story that is continuously developing and one that will keep our viewers updated on. But that was Amir Sheik, who's the chairperson of the Africa Diaspora Forum.